Hi, this is Nancy Buswell, and welcome to my third video on my Mock Exams with Miss Buswell YouTube channel. In my videos, I want to give you information about the IELTS speaking exam from the point of view of a former examiner. This is part 3. Now, if you're wondering, you look just the same as you did on the first two videos. Well, that's absolutely true, because I haven't even moved from my chair at my computer desk, my little workstation. To me, it makes sense to make the videos that are in a series at the same time. So this is a series of 3 videos, and I'm making them at the same time. I'm not positive exactly when I will upload them, if it'll be on different days or not, but I'm making them boom, boom, boom. I've got 2 more series I know that I will make, and I plan to make those at the same time. The next series is 4 lessons or explanations, information, whatever you want to say, about the 4 scores that IELTS examiners write down. You may think examiners only write down 1 score, a band 6.5, a band 7. They actually don't. They write down 4 scores for, I call it, fluency, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Now that's the short version. It's not actually called vocabulary, it's called lexical resources, for example. But that's the short way to say it. I'll be more correct when I actually make those videos in a week, possibly 2 weeks. So yeah, the next series will be about the 4 scores the examiner writes down, and then I'll have another series of 4 where I use those 4 scores that we write down. When I say we, I mean when I was working before, and now that I'm giving mock exams. And by the way, I do need to say I'm not associated with IELTS, the British Council, or IDP, or Cambridge. Not associated with them at all. I worked for the British Council 8 years ago. Not associated with them. Don't live in China anymore. Live in a small mountain town in the southern part of the U.S. working online. My goodness, did I just lose my train of thought? Do you know that expression? To lose your train of thought? I think I did. So I got it back. The train got back on the track. So I'll be making a video about the 4 things that examiners write down, that we write down. That's how I got off track. It's also called chasing rabbits. So I was kind of chasing a rabbit that way. Okay, come back here. It's like a dog. Da 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 da. Oh, a rabbit. I'm back on track now, I hope. I don't want to have to start this video again. It's the 3rd time I've started it. You don't know. Some YouTubers can just go boom and everything's fine. I think a lot of them have to start over again several times, especially if they're not using a script. I have the first 2 sentences written down right here. I have some notes right here, but except for the first 2 sentences, I'm talking off the top of my head. So sometimes that causes problems if I get off topic and can't remember my topic. But I find this, I find this more natural. It's a more natural way to talk. So yeah, the following series of 4 lessons will be about what a band 5, 6, 7, and 8 sound like. I think that was bad grammar. What bands 5, 6, 7, and 8 sound like for each of the 4 scores the examiner gives. So for example, what is band 5 grammar like? What is band 6 or 7 or 8 grammar like? Why does the examiner give the scores that she gives or that he gives? Let's get on the topic now. We will talk about part 3. Now, I said in part 2 that many people think this is the hardest part. And of course, the reason for that is you have to speak for 2 minutes. That's not natural. I think I would even have trouble speaking for 2 minutes unless I practiced. So I hope you're practicing too with a timer. Speak for 2 minutes now. On the other hand, some people say part 3 is the hardest. And it just depends on you. Now, the reason part 3 could be considered the hardest is because you can't find all the questions. It's not possible. I talked in the last video, it's possible to find the part 1 and part 2 questions online. There's a lot of different places to find them. But for part 3, some of the questions are asked by the examiner based on what you said. So the examiner has, the examination booklet, and she or he uses, I can't quite remember, it's been about 8 years, but uses, I think, 2 or 3 of the questions in the examination booklet, but is expected to ask 2 or 3 of her own questions, again, based on what you've said. Now, let's go back just a little bit. The part 3 questions, or the part 3 topic, is loosely based, or sometimes closely based, on the part 2 topic. So the examiner usually finishes part 2 and then says something like, well, you just talked about a sports person that you like. Now we'll talk about sports in general. So that's fairly close. Talk about a sports person or an athlete in part 2, and then you'll talk about sports in general. That's pretty closely, those two are pretty closely related. Other times you might look at the part 2 topic and then the part 3 questions and go, are these really related? But they're usually loosely related, if not closely related. So this is the hardest to prepare for because you can't prepare every answer. And if an examiner thinks that you've memorized the part 1 and part 2 answers, the examiner will wait until part 3 to decide what your score is. Now, many of them decide then anyhow, but often the experienced examiners know at the end of part 2 what the score is, and part 3 just confirms it. But if you're having really great vocabulary, but they think you memorized it, and maybe you don't even know what the words mean, they will wait until part 3 to see what your vocabulary level really is when they use questions that you couldn't have prepared for. Okay? So, you can't memorize your way to a high score because part 3 will stop you. So, yeah, please don't memorize answers, and don't use other people's answers online. Use your own answers and speak naturally. Okay? So in part 3, you have general questions. In part 1, you have more personal questions. Do you like? Have you ever? In part 3, it's what do people in your country think about? Or what do your people in your country do? Do most people think? These are general questions, not personal questions. And you should try to avoid giving a personal answer. Examiners, if you give a personal answer, do people in your country like to play sports? Yes, I like to play football. Well, number 1, that's off topic, and number 2, that's personal. People in my country like to play football, da 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 da, and I also like football. Yeah, you probably don't need to say I also like it. I don't think it's bad, but it's not really that necessary. So try to avoid giving personal answers in part 3 unless it just seems natural. Most people in my country like to do this, this, and this, but actually I'm different. I prefer to do this. But if you talk too much about what you like or about yourself, the examiner is very likely to say, thank you, and ask another question, or say, well, I didn't ask about you, what about other people? Okay? I've occasionally had students ask me how long their answers in part 3 should be. Actually, they've asked that about part 1 too. So should my answer in part 1 be 15 seconds, 25 seconds? Should I speak for 1 minute in part 3? I don't teach that way. I say, in part 3, give a complete answer. So it depends on what the question is. Just give a complete answer. Again, don't try to extend the answer. Give a natural and complete answer. Just like in part 1, if it seems like you're just trying to talk and talk and talk, the examiner may interrupt you and ask another question. So answer the question with a complete answer. Listen carefully and answer it. I'm repeating myself, so I think I've said everything I need to say about part 3. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to this video. If you'd subscribe, maybe click on like, that would really help me. This is a new channel. Very simple. I'm making very simple videos. No fancy things right now. Maybe I'll learn how to do some fancy things in the future. I've got some programs, some video programs. I'm not going to use them for these first 3 videos. But I do enjoy making videos. I do enjoy talking to you. And I hope that you do well on your IELTS exam. And I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comments. I can either answer or I can make a video also answering your question as time goes by. So thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.